I'm Robert Poyton of the Innsmouth Book Club. Welcome to the first of our Innsmouth excursions. I'm in Bedfordshire today and I'm just heading to Clophill. Clophill is a large village just to the south of Bedford, and as far as strange or gruesome events go, it's notable for two. In 1961, James Hanratty committed a murder in a lay-by on the A6 just on the edge of Clophill. And I believe I'm right in saying that Hanratty was the last man to be hung in England. Some people say this is connected to the location we're going to today, which is St Mary's Church. Now, this is an abandoned church, as you'll see, and over the years there have been numerous stories there of satanic rituals, of hauntings, of all sorts of strange goings on. Much is made of the fact that the church is built the wrong way round, and some claim that this means the church has become a focus for supernatural activity, a focus for satanic rituals and the like, and some have even called it a gateway to hell. Well, that's where we're heading today, and we're going to take a look and see if there's any foundation to these stories. So here we are at the site of St Mary's Church, or St Mary's Old Church, now listed as the Church of St Mary the Virgin. It was listed in 1961 as a Grade 2 building. So there's a huge amount of history in the area, lots of old churches, manor houses and buildings. It really is, Bedfordshire in general is an area very rich in history. So let's go up and have a closer look at the church. So it's believed the first foundations here were put down in the 10th century, and the church was rebuilt around 1350. These large windows were put in around 1450, and further additions were made in the early 19th century. So this was the village church until the 1840s, when a new church was built, I suspect in response perhaps to a growing congregation, but also, as you'll see if I pan around here, we're up on a hill above the village, so we're not really that close to the village centre, and the new St Mary's Church has been built right down, or was built right down in the centre of the village. So the building lay unused for about 100 years, and it was in the 1950s that the lead was taken from the roof, and following that the building fell into ruin. So as you can imagine, an empty building left unattended, it's isolated from the rest of the village, became somewhat of a magnet for vandalism, graffiti, antisocial behaviour. And really it wasn't until more recent times when English Heritage, Historic England and the Clophill Heritage Trust have really spent a lot of time refurbing the place, putting in security measures with the assistance of the local police crime reduction office, and eco-lodges have been built on the site here as well, to really trying to get away from some of the stories that have surrounded this place. And I have to say, here today it's a lovely summer's day. There's butterflies, there's long grass, there's amazing views across the countryside. It strikes me as a very nice, peaceful place. So this is where the darker history of the site begins, with this idea that the church was built facing the wrong way, facing away from the east. Traditionally, churches back in, well, certainly pre-medieval times, were built ad orientem, were built facing the east. Much has been made of the fact that this church doesn't do that. Some say it's aligned north-south, for example, and this is why it's attracted so much interest. This is what has encouraged the satanic practices here. In fact, churches being aligned to the east largely fell out of favour after the medieval period, and there's many churches that do not align this way. One of the most striking modern examples is Coventry Cathedral, for example, which is aligned north-south. There's also, and I'm not sure, I've not checked if it's the case with this church, a number of churches were built with the altar facing Jerusalem as well. So there's another indication that this alignment is not such a major issue that people may think it is. However, it is a fact that in 1963 a grave at the cemetery here was disturbed, a body was disinterred, and the bones were arranged in what some term a ritualistic fashion inside the building here. Now, that incident was repeated in 1969 and 1975. Whether that was the same people, or whether that was a sort of copycat thing, or it was just, I hesitate to use the words genuine satanic ritual, or perhaps people thinking they were doing a satanic ritual, I guess we could never know. But this seemed to cement the church's reputation as a place that attracted negative worship. I think those events and those sort of rumours might have contributed to this idea that somehow this church as a focus for evil or negativity had some bearing on the Hanratty murder. I think it's at best it's a very tenuous link. Serious crimes and murders happen all over the country, and if this was a focal point for that kind of thing, then one murder like that in the last 60 years doesn't seem to be a very strong focus. So I think that's something that can be readily discounted. Another rumour that appears if you research this church is that it was built on what was once a leper colony. Again, there's no actual historical evidence for that. That seems to be one of those rumours or urban legends that has spread up, or should I say rural legends, given the bucolic surroundings. There have been ghost sightings reported here, usually of a monk figure and also of a woman searching among the gravestones. So that's attracted a lot of interest from ghost hunter groups, some more serious than others. And again, it's something that has not been particularly welcome by the locals here, certainly the people looking after this land, because we do have a working cemetery here as well. People are still being interred here. I think it's questionable taste to go searching around that sort of area. Nonetheless, the church is a very interesting building. It's unusual to see a ruined church like this. Most of our churches, certainly in this part of the countryside, have been very well preserved, and most of them are still being used today. There are one or two exceptions, and I think for this one the main reason for the disuse was not the fact that it was a portal to hell, but the fact that it was just on the outskirts of the village and the congregation outgrew it. So hopefully you can see, although it is now obviously very much a ruin, it is being very well maintained and very well looked after. So there we go, that's St Mary's in Clophill. If you're coming here to find a peaceful spot and perhaps to stay at the eco lodges, then I'd recommend it. If you're coming here to look for ghosts or satanic rituals, then I think you're going to be disappointed. If you are interested in ghost stories and the like in Bedfordshire, then as I said, there's a lot of history around here. There are a lot of other places with much more reliable reports of hauntings or phenomena. For example, there's Chicksands Priory, almost just in view down the hill there. Access to that is a little difficult, as Chicksands is an RAF and Naval intelligence base, and the Priory is right in the middle of it. I did go in there once actually to play a gig at an officer's mess. So that's a wonderful old building, but I'm not sure that access to that is going to be so easy. But there's Houghton House about a mile away, which is another ruin that's got some interesting history. There's Flitwick Manor, there's Thurley Airfield. There's a lot of places around here that have reports of paranormal activity. So we'll be looking at some of those over the next excursions. So this is going to be a regular thing now as part of the Innsmouth Book Club podcast. I'm based down here in East Anglia, so I'll be covering this area. Bedfordshire I've already spoken about. but are also not far from places like Borley Rectory, for example. And of course, I'm going to get out to the coast at some point and give you a report from Dunwich. John is based up in Durham, and as you may have heard him say on the podcast, there's a lot of history up there, a lot of interesting sites to go and see, so we look forward to seeing those as well. If you haven't heard the podcast yet, we'll put a link to it in the show notes below. We do a bi-weekly podcast and we take you on a tour of Innsmouth, stopping at some of the main cultural sites. So we usually visit Innsmouth Museum, the library, the Picture House. We discuss Lovecraftian and other films, books, music, whatever's out at the moment, some new things, some old things. And we also speak to guests who are brave enough to stay at the Gilman House as well. We've had some great guests on in the past, and we've got some great guests lined up for the future. So please do click the link, take a look at us on Patreon, and if you'd like to support the podcast and help us grow, help us do more things like this and various other projects we've got in the pipeline, then please do look at signing up as a patron as well. From a few £1 a month you can join, and as well as getting the patron-only content, you also now get a monthly copy of the Innsmouth News PDF newsletter. So that's something worth looking at. In the meantime, I hope you've enjoyed the visit today. I'm going to take a stroll back down through the eco lodges here to the car, and I'll see you next time.